So with the Overture study results, what we were looking at is the primary outcome was something we called MADCOMS, which was a mild to moderate adjusted version of the ADCOMS. And it was targeted to be the most progressive in that stage of disease relative to Alzheimer's symptoms and what usually changes in Alzheimer's patients. Interestingly, we saw a treatment effect. It was in the right direction, but it was not statistically significant on the MADCOMS. And the ADAS-Cog and the CDR were also not significant, but we had really strong significance in this study on the ADCS-ADL. And I think the thing that's most interesting about that is it's really hard to change ADLs. And usually that's downstream of cognition. Cognition can move fairly readily, but ADLs are usually harder to change. And so seeing an effect where it's more difficult to show changes and not as strong of an effect on the ADAS-Cog is unusual. And that's something, that we'll need to do further research into and look into more. There are 3 Phase II trials that they've done, and we haven't put the results together from all 3 of these. But I think across all 3 of them, we should be able to figure out what's going on with that. The MMSE did show statistically significant effect, and whole brain volume did as well. And usually when I make recommendations to clients, I tell them to measure hippocampal volume because it's more disease specific and it's easier to change. It's a smaller region, and you can often see statistically significant changes in hippocampal volume when you have disease-specific effects that are affecting Alzheimer's disease. Whole brain is much harder to change because there's so many areas of the brain that are not directly related to Alzheimer's, at least in the earlier stages. And you have to change a lot of regions to be able to get significance there. And so again, we're seeing significance on the harder hurdle, but not on the easier one. And so something is different about this treatment than most of the other treatments out there. It doesn't seem to be just a specific Alzheimer's type mechanism, but it's probably broader because it's impacting not just hippocampal volume, but whole brain, and not just cognition, but all ADLs. And so I think there will be more research to look into that to figure out exactly, why that's happening. But it seems like it may be very complementary to more targeted Alzheimer's specific treatments because it is broader and it may be able to cover some of the aspects of Alzheimer's disease progression that are maybe a little bit harder to move with something that's directly targeting cognition. And so I think it'll be interesting, first of all, to look at all the Phase II studies together to see what those show, and then to figure out what's different about the aspects of cognition that are changing and maybe some of the aspects that aren't changing as readily. And remembering that it's a 6-month study, and so it may be that some of these could have changed if we'd gone a little bit longer. And it wasn't a very large study, and so the treatment effects that we're seeing on ADLs are really enormous. We're getting 7.6 point change on ADLs, which is a really big treatment difference. And so I think it's very promising. It's certainly still early. It's in the Phase II stage, but these results are very compelling and across multiple endpoints and likely to hold up in a new study. So designing the new study, I think, will be really interesting, and seeing how we can make sure that these same effects are seen and see if there are specific aspects of cognition that are not affected by this treatment, or see if we need to maybe target the way we measure it a little more specifically to this broader outcome and not just Alzheimer's disease, which is our usual approach.